Hey guys, welcome back to Crimson Shinobi. Today's fanfic is, hello guys, it's your friend Naruto Fanfics, back again with another awesome fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became a cold-blooded killer with a dark harem of kunoichi? Part 1. If you enjoy it, please show your support by hitting the like button and subscribing for more fanfics like this. And now let's get started. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and support the channel for daily Naruto fanfics. Now, let's begin. As a 13-year-old child, most children have ambitions that lead to something righteous, something that will lead to the better of mankind. Something silly, something only the very select few can ever possibly achieve. I used to be one of those type of people. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, age 13. Back when I was about 9 years old, my life consisted of dreams of becoming Hokage, the champion of the village. But these dreams were shattered by the villagers, who tortured and ridiculed me the entire time I existed on this miserable planet. They made it unbearable to live, making it so I was unable to have friends, unable to lead a normal life just because of the demon that laid within me. The Kyuubi, or which I refer fondly to as Master, is the beast that once attacked and slaughtered many of the villagers in the Konohagakure village. It was sealed away by the 4th Hokage, who decided it would be a good idea to seal the beast within a newborn child, me. So that is what began my pathetic existence, making it so that everyone hated me and couldn't even stand that I existed. What a life, huh? Yeah, but unfortunately this wasn't a happy ending for the village. All of that pain I felt began to gather, making me a true demon, a demon completely unlike the Kyuubi. I don't like to brag, but I did slaughter over 30 grown shinobi in that village at the young age of 9 years old. Am I a little psychotic? Yeah, but isn't everyone in perspective? And what would you do if you were the most hated individual in the area you lived in for no reason? I had no ambitions for Hokage. I knew even once I became the Hokage, they would still never respect me. So I took another ticket from the bag of fate and pulled another career, Shinobi Hunter. After escaping from the village, the Kyuubi began to teach me many different ways to use his strength in fun and violent ways. Now it seems that I have become a S-ranked ninja. My ranking in the bingo book is, kill on sight, which I am happy to report. You see, after seeing something like that, I know that the old saying is right. Respect is not given, it is earned. Those words are always repeating through my head as I go in for the kill. Well, might as well tell you what you came to hear. About my first major kill, about the time where I found a kill and a buddy, haha. It all started in the land of waves. It was another sunny day within the land of waves. I had been hiding out around there for a few months, a perfect place to lay low from the eyes of Konoha ninja. I was working within one of the few stores that resided in the town, working for the few coins they gave me on a daily basis. I had become friends with the people around me, becoming a regular Joe in this small village. It was a dry Wednesday, the sun beaming down upon my face as I swept the floor before the store opened up in a few minutes. As I did, I spotted Tazuna and his grandson Inari coming up to the store as usual, coming to buy their daily bread. Hey Tazuna-san, I greeted as I opened the door, allowing them to enter the store early. Go ahead and get what you need to get before the early bird rush comes in. You are too kind to us, Blondie, Tazuna said as he usually did as he patted me on my head and grabbed a small cart. He and Inari looked around the store as I watched them with a smile upon my face. The land of waves had really changed me for a while, finally in my life able to live somewhere without being considered a monster. My life had changed drastically. I barely even talked to Master like I used to. He usually was asleep anyways, hating if I waked him up for a pointless reason. As I continued to sweep the floors, I sighed happily as I looked at the clear blue sky outside. I wonder what those Konoha ninja even eat? Tazuna asked Inari as I froze where I stood. I looked back in surprise as I listened to the conversation. They aren't going to be able to do anything, Grandpa. I don't even know why you hired them, Inari replied as the broom dropped from my hands. Did Tazuna really betray me in such a way? Did he know who I was and hired Shinobi to eliminate me? No, there is no way someone would know me in this hick town. I continued to listen as I heard Tazuna speak about someone named Kakashi and his team of 3. I began to think of where I heard that name before, it seemed very familiar. Then I remembered, I had been speaking to one of my many associates and they had mentioned someone named Kakashi the Mirror Ninja. I felt beads of sweat go down my forehead as I heard this name be uttered from Tazuna's mouth. So I was going to have to slaughter Tazuna and his entire family, along with these ninjas from Konoha. Sigh, I truly hate my life sometimes. As these thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up my broom and continued to sweep, trying to change the subject within my mind. I wasn't able to, my mind completely focused on the sudden arrival of the Leaf Shinobi. Kakashi Hatake wasn't any ordinary ninja, not by any standards from what I heard. I heard that he was a holder of the legendary Sharingan, a technique that was thought to die out after the slaughter of the Uchiha clan. That was done by Itachi Uchiha, someone that I had the pleasure of meeting on several occasions when I allied with the Akatsuki. He seemed like the type to do it, heartless and cold, rarely talking unless it was to give a command. I heard he has a brother that still resides within the leaf named Sasuke Uchiha. I remember him, he was always alone by a small lakeside looking at the water. On many occasions I almost talked to him, but never worked up the nerve. So it wasn't a very warm feeling to have Kakashi within the same area as myself. Even though I had achieved power that no ordinary child could even fathom, I was constantly always having to be alert. As I watched Tazuna and Inari exit the store, I looked in surprise as young Inari dropped something upon the floor. I dropped the broom once again as I hurried to pick it up, retrieving it and handing it to the boy. "There you go, kid," I muttered in a low voice as I patted Inari on the head. "Got to keep a hold on dinner, all right?" Inari nodded as his grandfather laughed, patting me on the back. "Hey, you should come by tonight, Tsunami would be happy to see you again," Tazuna said as he walked out of the store. "I'll be there with the milk," I replied cheerfully as Tazuna laughed, exiting the store. I watched him leave with a sinister look upon my face, knowing what had to be done tonight. As I contemplated about my decision regarding slaughtering an entire family, I decided to take my half-hour break outside, which was unusual for me. I took a stroll down near the bridge, where I spotted Tazuna continuing with his bridge. Supposedly, this was supposed to be the bridge that was going to be able to open trade with other nations, allowing the land of waves to finally flourish with life. Currently, the little nation known as the Land of Waves was being manipulated by a billionaire that goes by the name of Gato. I have never run into Gato or any of his many goons that he keeps around to maintain order, but if his presence was gathering shinobi into this area, it was going to have to be looked into. I knew I could easily topple Gato and his sick little reign he had over this town, but things were going my way without me interfering. So I decided to keep my nose out of things that don't refer to me. So as I spotted Tazuna, I also spotted one of the Konoha shinobi that was accompanying him. It was a young woman around my age, with light pink hair. She had green eyes that sparkled like diamonds within the sun, her eyes meeting mine as I marveled at this magnificent specimen of woman. I decided since she would have no idea who I was to nonchalantly go over and speak with her and Tazuna. But as I prepared to do this, I spotted Gichi, one of Tazuna's bridge workers. They got into an argument, Gichi arguing about how Gato will kill them if they didn't stop construction on the bridge. I snickered as I continued listening, Tazuna finally just letting the argument go and telling Gichi that he didn't have to return. I quickly returned into the store as Tazuna walked towards my direction, the young shinobi following him to his destination. Tazuna walked right into the store. I was standing at the register, pretending to be busy. "Hey there, Blondie," Tazuna greeted as I waved at him like usual. "Got to get some lunch for Tsunami and the young shinobi." I nodded as I watched Tazuna reach over and examine the lunch meat, asking the girl if she liked turkey. The girl nodded as another man entered the store, my eyes meeting his as he looked down at the girl's bag that resided near her rear end. I wasn't looking at the bag, I watched as he reached out towards the bag, me body flickering away from the counter and in front of the man. I snatched his hand away in mid-air as he looked at me in surprise. I kneed him in the chest before the girl and Tazuna turned around. Apologize for trying to steal, I muttered as I twisted one of the man's fingers in circular motion. Do it now or I will increase the pain. The man nodded as he apologized quickly, pulling his fingers away as he ran from the store. Hey, thanks a lot for that, the girl said as she blushed softly. Nobody has ever done something like that for me. I'm Sakura Haruno. And you are. I'm Naruto, I replied uncertainly as I shook Sakura's hand. Sakura seemed to really be interested in me, her eyes not leaving my face as I dusted myself off. So, do you live around here, Naruto? Sakura asked as I shook my head yes. Yeah, but I'm more of a secluded kind of guy, I replied as Sakura nodded in response. Okay, love connection is over, we need to get back with lunch, Tazuna grumbled as he pointed to the counter, where he had placed his food. I nodded as I returned to the counter and rang up the food. After Tazuna paid for his food, I watched him and Sakura leave, Sakura looking back at me with a smile before she walked out the door. I smiled back as I heard laughter coming from within my mind. Naruto, sometimes you are so gullible, a voice muttered as I sighed. Master had awakened, and obviously been eavesdropping on the entire conversation that I just had with Sakura. Why I am gullible for? I asked as I closed my eyes, finding myself standing in front of Master's cage. All I did was tell her my name. What do you think she will do with that? Becoming interested in women have completely clouded your judgment, Master responded as I sighed. Not this stupid conversation again, I muttered as I looked down upon the ground. Didn't we have this conversation when I was like 10? You obviously didn't heed my warning then, so I have to repeat myself, Master replied as he sighed as well. You cannot allow the temptation of woman allow you to make foolish decisions, all you will do is secure your future in a jail cell or death. So don't heed my warning if you wish. I nodded as I reopened my eyes, knowing in my heart of hearts that Master was right. I had been so infatuated with that Sakura girl, I had actually told her my real name. I'm sure that someone like Kakashi Hatake would know that name and most likely act upon hearing it come from Sakura's mouth. I knew that I had to investigate this situation more, placing me into an awkward position. I sighed as I placed a close sign on the door of the shop, knowing this would be the last day I worked within its walls. As the day continued on, I decided to take a stroll around the forest to clear my mind. As I did, I spotted another of the other shinobi that were traveling with Kakashi Hatake. He looked like Itachi besides the hair, his hair strange in the back and wavy in the front. He wore a blue shirt with the Uchiha symbol on the back of it, along with white khakis and black sandals. I was guessing this was Sasuke Uchiha, the second survivor of the Uchiha massacre. He was training intensely, trying to achieve what looked as if it was a training drill. I watched him for a minute as he concentrated his chakra to his feet and continued to try to climb the tree without using his hands. Not bad, I muttered as I decided to allow myself to be heard, Sasuke turning around quickly as he heard my voice. Who are you? He asked as I chuckled softly, deciding to have a little fun with the genin. I'm someone you wouldn't want to meet in the woods around when the sun goes down, I replied as I looked up at the sky, the sun beginning to go down. Sasuke looked up as well, smiling as he realized what I meant. So am I supposed to be scared? Sasuke asked as I chuckled once more, shrugging to answer his question. Most people are, but you don't need to be if you think I can't kill you, I responded with a grin. So, mind telling me why leaf shinobi are in my neck of the woods? Actually, that is classified, Sasuke answered with a smile creeping upon his face. You want the answer, fight me for it, boogeyman. You aren't nothing like your brother Itachi, I replied as Sasuke's eyes widened. Oops, I shouldn't have let that slip out. What do you know about Itachi? Sasuke asked darkly as his eyes stared into my own menacingly. I shrugged as he rushed at me, preparing to strike. I simply body flickered away, not even humoring this fool. Sasuke looked around in surprise as I appeared behind him, tapping him on the shoulder. Sasuke turned around as I elbowed him in the chin, Sasuke's teeth clicking together loudly as I did this. I then slammed my fist into his stomach, Sasuke coughing in my face as I did this. I then backed away as I let Sasuke take in all of this pain. Now, allow me to ask you again, why are you and Kakashi Hatake here? I asked as Sasuke chuckled, looking up at me as he took in gulps of air. So that is why you are concealing your chakra, Sasuke replied as I closed my eyes, a smile crossing my face. You don't want to be discovered by Kakashi, so you must be some wanted criminal. Ah, so I guess our presence must have gotten you a little nervous, huh? But you seem pretty young to be a criminal. I didn't let him finish, body flickering behind him and slamming my fist into his back. Sasuke coughed out blood from this attack, breathing heavily as he kneeled upon the ground. I walked up to him, bending down and putting my index finger in front of his face. This is my index finger, something that I can use to kill you, let me explain, I muttered as I concentrated all of my chakra into that index finger. I also used some of Master's chakra, giving my finger the vile red aura as I gathered all of the chakra in that one finger. I then stood up and picked up a piece of wood that was just laying around the forest. Now, watch what I can do to this piece of wood by just touching it, I said as I ran my finger down the middle of the wood splitting down the middle. You see, my chakra is very different. I can use it like a claw, concentrating my chakra to my finger and it can cut steel. Now, cutting the neck of a little genin is also possible with this little trick as well. I can also use this in each of my fingers, making it so I have basically animal claws. Now, I walked back to Sasuke and grabbed his neck roughly as I pulled him into a choke hold with my free hand. I put my finger that was infused with chakra at his neck, beads of sweat going down Sasuke's neck as I did. I gently ran my finger across his neck, his throat opening slowly as blood dripped from his neck. One more chance, tell me what is going on, I whispered in Sasuke's ear as I reached his voice box. Either that or you won't ever talk again. Well, that's if someone gets you help in time, of course. Otherwise, you will just die from blood lost. It's all on you, Sasuke. As I prepared to slit the genin's throat, I sensed another person within the area. I quickly dropped Sasuke as I was suddenly bombarded by kunai. I dodged most of them, some of them hitting me in the back as I was trying to escape. So, you are Naruto Uzumaki, a voice muttered behind me as I turned and spotted an injured man wearing a hitai around one of his eyes. He wore the normal Jonin outfit, making me assume that this must be the famous Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi Hatake, I'm to presume? I asked as the man nodded, a smile crossing my face as I removed the kunai from my back. The Kyuubi of the leaf, Kakashi said as he examined my face. Only 13 and one of the most feared individuals in the shinobi world. Your vicious nature doesn't do your bio justice. I chuckled as I clapped my hands softly, knowing that this would be too easy with Kakashi being injured. Without an injury, it would be difficult to kill a shinobi with the Sharingan, me wanting to get a hold of this ever since I seen the abilities of the eye by watching Itachi at work. Kakashi, how about I make you an offer you can't refuse? I offered as a grin appeared on my face. Since you won't be able to be me like this, how about you give me your Sharingan eye and I shall allow you to leave here without any injuries. But if you don't, I promise to kill you, your team of nobodies and Tazuna's entire family. I'll also take your eye as well. So, let's make this quick then, Kakashi. Yeah, no deal, Kakashi shouted as a bead of sweat went down his forehead. Even though you most likely know all of the fourth jutsu due to you stealing the scroll with his jutsu sealed inside, I will not just give you the Sharingan. Suit yourself, old man, I muttered as I allowed my chakra to flow throughout my body, the trees beginning to blow. Kakashi looked around as I borrowed some more of Master's chakra, my eyes turning red with slits in the middle of them. The red chakra flowed through my body, increasing my hunger for destruction. And yes, I do know the fourth jutsu, I muttered as I gathered a familiar jutsu within my left palm. Now, prepare to die, Kakashi Hatake. This wasn't what I was expecting tonight. I was expecting something to occur, kill Tazuna's family, but not get into a battle for the Sharingan with Hatake Kakashi. I always wondered why Konan referred to me as very impulsive when she described me to Pain. Even though Konan knows I'm the best damn thing on this planet, it seems that she doesn't always support my stupid decisions. It was kind of ironic, as I stood there in a battle against Kakashi. I stood with the Rasengan within my palm, Kakashi waiting for me to make my move for some odd reason. Obviously he was stalling for some reason, or he knew that he couldn't possibly compare to me in the form his body was in. He was walking on crutches, for God's sake. It seemed like a low blow to attack someone who was technically crippled, but I couldn't say I really gave a. As I prepared to attack, Master awoke, chuckling as he analyzed the situation I was in. A battle for the legendary Sharingan, huh? Master said as I chuckled as well. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the Sharingan, it reminds me of that vile filth known as Madara Uchiha, someone that I have had advanced interactions with in the past. Madara Uchiha, huh? I responded as I thought about the name. Nope, never even heard of him. Sounds like I would totally kick his. Anyway, me with the Sharingan would most likely come in handy. Besides, Konoha does like to kiss the of the users of Sharingan, Byukugan, the fabled Rinnegan, or anything that makes someone above average, so why not? It would be fun to think of them thinking of me with the Sharingan. Might even make my ranking go up in the bingo book. You do things for the stupidest reasons, Naruto, Master replied as I laughed. I am only but 13 years old, Master, I answered as I turned back to the battle. Kakashi was still standing there, looking at me skeptically as I basically talked to myself out loud. I took off, running at Kakashi with the Rasengan in my palm as Kakashi dodged without much effort. Using the fourth jutsu for your own gain, Kakashi muttered as he dropped his crutches to the ground, his legs buckling a bit as he tried to keep himself steady. The fourth jutsu is weak in comparison to the upgrades I gave them, I responded as I appeared behind Kakashi. Kakashi gasped in surprise as the Rasengan in my palm grew in size and was infused with more of Master's chakra. I shoved it into his back, Kakashi seemingly taking the attack. I smirked as Kakashi was replaced with a small log, knowing that he would use this trick. Kakashi stood within a tree above me, preparing to get the drop on me. So is that your plan? I whispered within Kakashi's ear as he froze in surprise. I pulled out a lone kunai and slammed it into Kakashi's back, that Kakashi also disappearing. I looked around the area, trying to sense where Kakashi had disappeared to. As I did, I jumped to the ground and scanned the area. Suddenly, I was grabbed from underground, a hand shooting out and grabbing my ankle. I looked down in surprise as I was dragged underground by force. I looked up as Kakashi stood above me, smiling as he picked up his crutches. I smiled back as the me that was within the ground disappeared, Kakashi's smile fading quickly. As he scanned the area for me, he gasped as hundreds of clones of myself emerged from the trees, all smiling as they laid eyes on Kakashi. Kakashi backed up slowly, knowing that he was physically not able to continue this battle. His injuries were still healing, and this added aggravation was just furthering them. I knew that he would eventually succumb to me, I was just wearing him out and playing the waiting game. I remained hidden as the clones attacked, Kakashi pulling a kunai from his makimono pouch. He went into battle with the clones lazily attacking as Kakashi simply slashed at them as they advanced. I knew that it would be difficult to penetrate Kakashi's defense, knowing that he is one tricky bastard. I needed to catch him off guard, which would be difficult with his Sharingan activated. I didn't know much about the Sharingan, but I did know it most likely would point out the real me in this bunch of clones. I was planning to use the Rasengan on him by emerging from the crowd, but that wouldn't work most likely. I could always use the Flying Raijin, but that drained chakra quite a bit when I tried to use it. Also, I hadn't mastered it quite yet, making it quite annoying to decide what to do. I couldn't afford to waste chakra. I wanted to drag this out as long as need be. Naruto, just paralyze him and then use the special Rasengan I taught you, Master suggested as I grinned in response. I pulled from my back pocket 3 kunai that were connected by steel wire. These were specially created for me by Deidara, who thought it would be a good idea to give such a weapon to a child. But he is so demented himself, it's not hard to actually fathom. The kunai could be used as a quick trick, throwing them and creating a net-like trap for the opponent. At least that is what Deidara said, but I barely ever understand that guy. Naruto, my man, he had said when he handed me the weapon. These are tools that I was given that I am now giving to you. Use them wisely, they might come in handy. God, he was annoying. But maybe he had a point. I threw the kunai at Kakashi, the steel wires appearing and strapping around his body, me using this opportunity to appear behind him with what I called my final Rasengan. This Rasengan was created purely with Master's chakra, huge in size. I slammed it into Kakashi's back with the distraction of the kunai, this actually connecting. Kakashi was slid across the ground with the Rasengan, dirt and blood coming out of his mouth as I walked up on him. As he realized he couldn't move anything but his arms, he tried to pull out a kunai and stab his eye that contained the Sharingan. One of my clones stopped him, the others grabbing his arms and wrenching them behind his back as I came in front of him and held his face in front of my own. Without any warning, I pulled his Sharingan eye from the socket, blood going all over my hands as I pulled the nerves and everything along with it. The eye was within my hands, me looking down at it with admiration. I then took my free hand and pulled out my own eye, wincing slightly as I pulled my eye from its socket. I placed Kakashi's Sharingan eye within my own socket. I then left the rest to Master, who used his chakra to mold the eye into my socket. The nerves connected with my own, the healing process occurring. I grinned. I removed my hand from the area, revealing my Sharingan eye. Let's see, now that I have information on how the eye works, I think I can make a duplicate within your other eye, Master informed me as I gasped. Are you for real, Master? I asked as I felt my other eye going through intense pain. I moaned in annoyance as Master chuckled. Even after doing such a vile thing, you still act like a child, Master muttered as my eye suddenly stopped hurting. There, it is done now. You now have a set of Sharingan eyes that you can use. I grinned as I looked around the area, my vision completely different now. I seen things completely different now, my eyes showing me so much. Kakashi-sensei, a voice shrieked as I looked behind me and spotted 2 women running towards me. One of the women were Sakura, the other I was guessing was her teammate. Sakura-chan, good to see you, I said nonchalantly as Sakura pulled a kunai from a pouch on her back. I chuckled as she chucked it at my forehead, me catching it between my fingers in midair. Ino, we need to do something. Sakura shouted as I began to flat out laugh at her. He has killed Kakashi-sensei. He isn't dead, just passed out probably from the pain I just inflicted by snatching his Sharingan from his skull, I responded as both Sakura and Ino gasped. Who the hell are you? Ino asked as I appeared behind her using the body flickering technique. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the red demon of the leaf, I whispered within her ear as I shoved the kunai that I had caught into her back, blood rushing from Ino's mouth as she looked back at me in surprise. Sakura gasped as I removed the kunai from her back, the blade making a sickening sound as I pulled it out and Ino fell to the ground. Blood gathered around the girl's body as I chuckled at this cruelly. Why are you doing this? Sakura choked out as I chuckled again, wiping the blood on my hands onto my pants. Well, first I was tortured by the within your village, I responded as I put a hand to my head mockingly, as if I was really thinking about all of this. Got no justice for that until I just took care of the issue by myself. Second, I kinda like killing now, due to how much I have done it in my short lifetime. Third, I'm crazy. Fourth, I just don't like Konohagakure Shinobi for some crazy reason. I wonder if that has something to do with issue number 1. You are a sick bastard. Sakura screamed as I nodded in agreement. How could you just take life like that? Were you paying attention a minute ago? I asked as Sakura shook her head in disgust. Look, I don't really kill chicks that look good, so you are free to go. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about your ugly friend. Even though I promised myself to a certain blue-haired girl when I am able to poke her on the nose without standing on my tippy toes quote unquote. I think that me and you can one day make this happen. Come see me when you lose something you truly care for, then you will realize that this world and the true colors of it. Everyone criticizes you until they get put into a situation where they must walk in your shoes. I walked away after this, leaving Sakura there looking at me as I walked back into the town. Man, now what do I do? I complained as I unlocked the door to my small hut and jumped onto the bed. I guess I should get some rest and then finish where I left off tonight. But for now, rest is needed. As I thought about what was on the schedule tomorrow, I grinned with satisfaction as I closed my eyes and fell into a deep sleep. I was running, where was unknown. All I know that I was escaping from someone giving chase as I ran through what looked like the forest outside of the Konohagakure village. I tried to turn around, but my neck was as stiff as a board. I couldn't turn around, couldn't stop. My legs just continued running, even though my body was tired out. As I continued running, someone was finally in my range of view ahead of me. This person was not anyone I recognized, someone that was completely a mystery to me. I continued running as the person drew a kunai from within their jacket, preparing it as I continued towards them. Without any movement within my body besides my legs, I was cut in the throat by the kunai, choking on blood as it drained from my body. I looked up at the person as my vision went hazy, the person standing with a smile upon his or her face. I faded from the scene, waking up within my bed. I looked around the room, my body drenched in sweat as I sat up within the bed. I stood up and pulled the curtains, sunlight bathing the room in its sweet light. I sighed as the dream began to slowly fade away, becoming nothing but a memory. As I walked from the window, I opened my front door, inhaling in the sweet air as I stuck my face outside the door. As I did this, it seemed that something had the small village in more of a tizzy than usual. As I stepped outside my house, I stopped one of the regulars that came to the shop as I spotted him running down the street. After stopping him and speaking to him for a minute, he explained to me that Gato was down at the bridge, making an example of Tazuna and his entire family. It seemed that the shinobi that were designated to protect him, the injured Kakashi, the injured Sasuke, the dead Ino, and the still-kicking Sakura had abandoned their mission and returned to Konohagakure, leaving Tazuna's family at Gato's mercy. He was apparently gathering all of the citizens to the bridge so they could all witness Tazuna's execution. Now, usually I would be all for seeing a person get executed, but to execute someone that I planned on killing. That left me with nothing to do this entire day. So, of course I decided to occupy myself by going down to the bridge and putting on my own one-man show. I was going to slaughter Gato, then his gang, his hired muscle, and then I would slaughter Tazuna's family to top it off. I knew that this would get my street cred up, and besides, I didn't even get to use the Sharingan in battle yet. So this seemed like a perfect time to experiment and blow time before I left the village. After I left the village, I had to make contact with my 2 contacts anyway, so this would be the perfect time waster until then. I returned back into my hut, retrieving all of my carry-on items and placing them in my sheepskin bag. I then pulled on some fresh clothes and headed out the door. Dressed in my all-black cloak that covered my face from view and my normal red and black shirt with my black sandals, I headed to the bridge. The first thing I saw was Tazuna himself strapped against the bridge. Gato and his 2 samurai were standing next to him with sick grins on both of their faces. Another 2 people stood behind them, one a man wearing a black shirt with the sleeves cut off, a huge sword sheathed upon his back. The other was a woman, wearing an Anbu mask upon her face. I snickered as I pushed through the crowd, making my way to the front so I could see this. This man and his family has committed acts of treason against me and this entire land. Gato shouted as he pointed at Tazuna, who seemed to be more worried about Tsunami and Inari, who were tied up and sitting next to him. This is the price for defying my law. Gato continued as he snapped his fingers, his 2 samurai stepping forth and unsheathing their swords that were at their waist. They both held each of their swords at Tazuna's neck, Tazuna looking up with fear in his eyes. I've seen enough of this foolishness, I muttered loudly as Gato looked around the area, wondering who said those words. Excuse me, Gato asked as he scanned the crowd. Who said those words in my presence? Would you like to come up here and join this man in his execution? Wouldn't matter, I replied as I looked up at Gato, his eyes looking at my cloaked face. You and your men couldn't kill the likes of me anyway. But since you gave me the invitation, I body flickered next to Gato, the 2 swordsmen removing their swords from Tazuna's neck and now focused their attention on me. So, this kid has decided to die, has he? One of the swordsmen asked with a grin upon his face. Well, let me tell you who we are. Hopefully it will haunt you while you contemplate your decision in the afterlife. I am Zori, and this is Waraji. I chuckled at this, my hands beginning to glow of Master's chakra. Well, at least you told me your names, I responded as the 2 samurai snickered. Now everyone knows what to put on your gravestone when they are burying your lifeless corpses. With that, I watched as both swordsmen readied their blades, both Zori and Waraji swinging their swords at me with lightning-like speed. I body flickered behind them and stuck both of my hands into their backs like daggers, my hands coming out of their chest. The 2 swordsmen both began to cough up tremendous amounts of blood before they fell to the ground, their limp bodies leaking blood as they were the first within the body count. A wicked grin crossed my face as I wiped the blood off my hands on my pants, Gato backing away as he seen this display of raw power. He looked back at the man and the woman behind him, who were watching as if this wasn't the first time they witnessed something of this magnitude. Zabuza, execute this boy now, Gato ordered as the man called Zabuza side, placing his hand upon the heel of the sword on his back. I'm sick of cleaning up your messes, Zabuza muttered as Gato growled with anger. But this is all on your pay, so why not live it up? Okay Haku, let's go. The girl nodded, following Zabuza as he walked and stood before me. Zabuza Momochi huh? I asked as Zabuza snickered loudly. So you have heard of my exploits, child? Zabuza asked as I chuckled softly. You are pretty good, I was warned about you by one of my contacts, I responded as Zabuza snickered again. She told me that if I continued on my path, I would eventually run into you. So you are telling me that you are actually worth my time? Zabuza asked as I remained silent. What's wrong, little mouse? Is you tail caught between your legs now? I'll give you one last chance to escape since me and you aren't very different, I replied quietly as I thought about what my contact had told me about him. I actually admire what you did, it's quite inspiring to know that I'm not the only crazy mother out in this world. But, I will only offer this once. If you decline, I'm going to murder you and your assistant there will minimal ease. Your choice. Zabuza didn't answer at first, looking away as Haku looked at him. Without any warning, Zabuza unsheathed his blade and swung the giant sword at my face, the wind from the attack blowing the hood away from my face. The crowd gasped as I was shown, Zabuza looking at me skeptically as he studied my face. Naruto Uzumaki, the only child that could speak such words and actually be able to back them up, Zabuza muttered as Haku gasped out loud. Well, you are right about one thing. Me and you would have eventually met up, you were actually one of my jobs that I hadn't taken yet. It seems you have made quite a few enemies within this small world for such a young boy. Well, even though it wasn't the original plan, I guess I will have to kill you now." With this, Zabuza rushed at me and began to swing his sword expertly, not sloppy like the previous samurai. He swung it accurately, knowing that I could only dodge this attack, not giving me enough time to whip anything up to counter it. I grinned as I knew this was going to be fun. I jumped back after dodging, making hand signs as Zabuza did the same. Kaden Ryuka no Jutsu, Fire Style, Dragon Fire Skill. I shouted as I shot a ball of fire shaped as a dragon from out of my mouth, as Zabuza used his jutsu. Suiden Suiryuden no Jutsu, Water Style, Water Dragon Jutsu. Zabuza shouted as a stream of water that was also shaped as a dragon from near the water that was under the bridge. The two dragons clashed violently, my fire attack getting cancelled out by the water style jutsu. The after effect was the area getting shrouded in smoke, the smoke sifting through the air mysteriously. Kurigakur no Jutsu, Hidden in the Mist Jutsu, Zabuza whispered as the smoke turned into fog, the grin on my face growing as I prepared to use my secret. Sharingan, I shouted as Zabuza chuckled, thinking that there was no way that I could have such an technique. But little did he know that I had casted a genjutsu upon him as he connected with my eyes after his sword blew my hood from my face. This made it so I looked as if my eyes were blue like they used to be. This was funny to me, knowing that this ignorant fool couldn't even tell that he was under the most simple and grade school of all genjutsu. Funny thing was that I wasn't very good at genjutsu either, so I was hoping that the Sharingan would increase my abilities in that department. I could see Zabuza clear as day as he walked around the smoke quietly, preparing to strike me when I was supposedly off my guard. He crept behind me as I looked to the side without turning my head, a smile creeping upon my face. Zabuza took a mighty swing as I ducked in response, looking back at Zabuza as he looked back into my eyes. I cancelled the genjutsu, allowing Zabuza to see what I truly looked like. My eyes were revealed to him, his hands almost dropping his sword as he looked into my eyes. "That can't be possible that you could have such eyes," Zabuza exclaimed as I chuckled. "You aren't an Uchiha, but how are you using fire-style type jutsu? This isn't adding up at all." My body flickered behind Zabuza as a bead of sweat went down his forehead. "I'll tell you my secret if you want to hear it," I whispered as I placed one hand upon his back. Zabuza looked in fear as he tried to turn around and swing his sword, but I had different plans. Using concentrated chakra, I blew a hole within Zabuza's back, the chakra so vile and strong, Zabuza standing no chance with my hand on his back. He fell to his knees quickly as I walked in front of him, looking at the fallen psychopath. I defeated Kakashi Hatake and stole his Sharingan from him, I told Zabuza as he looked up at me with the wraps around his mouth turning the color of blood. He unwrapped them as he coughed up more blood onto the ground. Haku watched from the sidelines in horror, taking off her mask as she ran up to Zabuza. "Zabuza, this cannot be," Haku shouted as she looked at Zabuza with shock on her face. "Tell me that you are going to make it. Haku, I want you to go with this boy," Zabuza choked out as more blood dripped from his mouth. "It may seem unorthodox at this time, but I tell you this for a reason. The reason you exist will be found if you travel with him, because you both also have similar looks in your eyes. Never walk from you path Naruto Uzumaki. Never." With these words, Zabuza died, his eyes rolling into the back of his head as Gato began to make noises behind me. I looked at Haku, who was looking at me with utter loathing in her eyes. "Even though I do not understand the reason Zabuza wants me to go with you, I will accept his final wishes," Haku stated as I chuckled softly. "He didn't want me to kill you, but that might not matter," I replied as I turned to Gato. "Now, you were saying before." Gato didn't say a word as he backed away from me advancing the more he backed up. As I prepared to kill Gato, I was interrupted by Haku, who chucked something that looked like ice at Gato's head, the ice piercing his forehead as he dropped to the ground dead. I turned in surprise, Haku looking down at Gato's body with a smile. Zabuza never liked him, Haku muttered as she replaced her mask upon her face, looking away from me as I looked at her. So you steal my kill because some dead didn't like somebody, I shouted as my fist clenched to my side, preparing to strike the girl. But then they unclenched, a grin forming upon my face. Not bad at all, girl, I said as I picked up Zabuza's sword, placing it upon my back. It covered my entire back, barely even big enough to carry. You are taking Zabuza's sword? Haku asked as she spotted me doing this. You deserve it for killing such a powerful opponent, even though I want to drive a spike into your skull. I snickered as I looked over at Tazuna and his family, wondering if I should finish my job. But as I looked back at the dead bodies of Zabuza and the two samurai, I was surprisingly content. So, I decided to leave the village there, leaving my legacy forever on this land. Haku followed as well, going by Zabuza's dying words. I guess it wasn't bad to have someone tag along with me, especially a female. 'Cause with just me and Master, it was becoming a real sausage fest, to be honest. I continued on my path, the path that would eventually be the death of me, or will create a legend. As I continued down the path near the Konohagakure village, I waited within a secret path that led to the secret area where I met up with my two contacts. As I walked down this path, I instructed Haku to remain behind, which she was reluctant to do at first. It wasn't the order itself, I think it was because she really didn't like me so much. It's not as if I could blame the poor girl, I did slaughter the only person she actually cared for in this entire world. But as long as she wanted to remain alive, she would obey my orders without question. She might have inherited a Kekkei Genkei such as I, but we all know that mine was way stronger. So, as I continued down the path, I waited for the signal that would mean the area was clear. I waited for a few seconds before I seen a small paper bird fly by my face, the signal from one of my contacts to tell me the area was clear. I headed into the area quickly, spotting my two contacts standing against two separate trees that were facing the opposite direction of each other. My first contact was the deadly beauty Konan of the Akatsuki. Her paper skills mixed along with her ninjutsu was uncanny. The second was the snake princess Anko. She was my contact for the leaf and Orochimaru, who I was actively watching. After Orochimaru has bestowed Anko with the curse mark, he found out that he had made a miscalculation with her abilities and that the curse mark wouldn't react to her. So with that, he turned her loose, making her a spy for his side. But little did many people know, she wasn't under the control of Orochimaru as he thought she was. She was also the only person to actually find me when I escaped from the village all those years ago. I had been running through the forest all night, the morning had just arrived. Anbu had been alerted that I had escaped my home during the night and were sent into the forest to find me. I was still in the forest, unable to navigate through the. I would have surely been caught and returned to the village if I hadn't spotted Anko, who I was first going to kill when I seen her. She had spotted me and looked deep into my eyes, seeing the rage within me. At first I was extremely wary, thinking she was stalling me for the Anbu so that they could ambush me. So as I walked towards her, my kunai was within my grip behind my back. She walked up to me and as I prepared to stab her in the chest, she smiled at me. Yeah, you are probably thinking, that stopped him. But it truly did. I had never been smiled at in my life, people always chucking rocks at me or screaming angry remarks when I passed them. Never had anyone stopped and looked at me with a smile. Maybe that was all I needed, maybe my path wasn't supposed to be this way. But I digress, she smiled and I stopped the attack. After talking for a few minutes, she told me that she had just been instructed by Orochimaru to return back into the village. She told me that if I needed help, that Orochimaru could help me find my way. I decided to follow her as she told me that she would escort me to Orochimaru's hideout. Desperate, tired, and hungry, I followed without much regret. What took place after that was an adventure of its own right. Flashback. As I followed this young girl out of the perplexing forest, I began to think of the words that she had spoke. She had sounded like an android when she spoke them, telling me that Orochimaru could help me plus bestow me with unlimited power. This intrigued me, thinking that power like that sounded too good to pass up on. So I followed without asking any questions on the matter, more interested to find out who this mysterious woman was. "Hey, who the hell are you, lady?" I asked in my oh so polite way. The woman smiled again as she turned and flashed me a thumbs up. "I'm Anko, nice to meet ya," she answered as she looked back at me, expecting me to tell her my name. I continued to run with her, not saying anything of the sort. "So you are a shy one, huh?" Anko asked as I still didn't reply. "That's okay, I was like that at one point as well. But when I found Orochimaru, he trained me and gave me a purpose in this world. I thank him for everything that he did for me." "You sure talk about this guy like you worship the guy or something," I replied as Anko looked away, not answering this time. I shrugged as we continued to run, not saying anything to each other. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki," I finally said as Anko turned to me and smiled again. Her smile made me happy for some reason, but I was still just a naive young boy so. But as we continued, we finally were setting a good pace. We were hours ahead of where we once were, Anko turning around and telling me that Orochimaru's hideout wasn't too far away. I nodded as she led me deep into some cave, where she knocked on some strange door. "Anko, come in," a voice hissed as Anko opened the door, bowing as she moved aside to let me walk into the room first. I did this, the room filled with complete utter darkness. As I stepped in, candles suddenly flickered on, a man sitting in the middle of the room with a smirk upon his face. He was a strange one, his face a pale white and his eyes like snake eyes. As I looked at him, I turned and looked back at Anko, who was looking away with a blank expression upon her face. "Naruto Uzumaki, I have heard many good things from you from my spies within the village," the man spoke out as I shuddered at the sight of this creepy man. "You were quite the person to track down, but I knew I would find you. I am Orochimaru, and I would like to bestow you with power and make you into a true shinobi." "What do you know about being a shinobi?" I interrupted as I chuckled rudely. "You are some weird idiot that holes himself up in caves and tries to obviously lure young children in." As I continued on my rant, Orochimaru disappeared from the chair, my eyes widening as I looked over my shoulder, where he stood. I backed away slowly as I backed right into someone, Orochimaru somehow. But he was still in front of me, so it made no sense. I looked as the whole room was surrounded with the snake weirdo, nowhere for me to escape. "You just don't understand what I can give you, so allow me to give you just a taste," Orochimaru hissed as he motioned for Anko to come to him. "Anko, show him what he could learn if he swears his life to me." Quote. Anko stepped forth, not saying anything as she looked at me with a blank expression. That confirmed it now, Anko was being controlled by this snake. As the clones of Orochimaru disappeared, Anko ran at me without warning, my eyes widening as I was kicked directly in the chest. I coughed loudly as I was then pushed into the wall next to Orochimaru's chair with Anko's palm. I looked up with my eyes red with the slit in the middle of them, meaning Master was obviously awake and encouraging me to fight. Without words I understood, taking off at Anko as she took off at me. As I prepared to swing, she jumped back and made quick hand signs. "Ninjutsu," I wondered as Anko used her jutsu. "Sene Jishu, Shadow Snake Hand." Anko shouted as snakes emerged from out of her sleeves, the snakes coming out and trying to grapple onto me. I didn't know what to do as they did, just standing there as the snakes attacked me and injected me with their venom. As this occurred, I fell to the ground, not expecting the venom's effects to take hold so quickly. Orochimaru chuckled as he removed something within a small tube from his outfit. "Since it has come to this, how about I make you a deal, Naruto?" Orochimaru asked as his smile increased. "I'll give you the antidote for your snake bite if you join me. And trust me, This venom cannot be affected by your healing factor even though you have your little friend within you. Quote. I gasped in surprise that he knew this information, but as I looked down and seen that the snake bites had already disappeared, I knew it wasn't that hard to figure out. But how did he know to use snakes with some kind of special venom? Then I realized the horrible truth. This was a trap from the beginning. Anko was sent for me, probably after Orochimaru heard from his contacts within the village that I was the #1 candidate for murdering all of those shinobi. After figuring this out, it was as simple as predicting what I would do after this. This wasn't any ordinary man, he was good. Not just smart, but strong as well. But there was something different in Anko. I could tell that she wasn't trying to obey this idiot. It was just something that I felt deep down in my heart, that I knew that smile was real. Did I want to fool myself into thinking so? Maybe, but I knew that I had to go with my gut feeling. So I did, deciding to tell Orochimaru to go to hell and focus on getting Anko to snap out of whatever she was in. Orochimaru waited patiently for me to answer. Well, why wouldn't he? My body was beginning to numb, the poison turning my face slightly blue. I was beginning to feel weaker, so I knew I had to do this quick. Anko, please stop this. I shouted as Orochimaru chuckled softly, thinking of course that this was for naught. Anko, I haven't known you for long, but I can tell that we are alike. Me and you want to find the reason why we exist in this miserable world. We just took different routes to try to answer that question. I slaughtered the objects of my pain, you teamed up with some psychopath snake guy that doesn't value you or you life. As these words came from my mouth, I was surprising the hell out of myself. Then again, I was on the verge of death, so anything could happen, right? It will do you no good, now swear you loyalty before you die. Orochimaru shouted in a rather desperate way. I then realized something else. He needed me alive. He expected me to succumb to his demands after he poisoned me, but I wasn't budging. All of this was pure bluffing, knowing that I would never side with him easily. Off snake man, I replied as Orochimaru looked at me angrily. You will die, child, if you don't obey my demands. Orochimaru pointed out the obvious, a smile crossing my face. Well, I guess you wouldn't be able to experiment on me or whatever you want to do, huh? I replied as Orochimaru's hands shook as if he was about to explode. I obviously had rained all over his smug parade, and it was pissing him off to no end. I began to kneel down to the ground, my vision growing blurry. My legs felt like rubber, my body so heavy all of a sudden. I felt as if I wanted to take a long nap, but I knew that I must stay awake, for my life depended on it. As I began to slowly perish, I looked up at Anko with the smile that she had given me, Anko looking back at me with widened eyes. As this occurred, I fell face first onto the ground, hearing Master within me screaming for me to survive. Sorry, no can do this time, I muttered as my vision began to immediately go out. As I looked up for what I thought was the final time, Anko gave me something, shoving it into my mouth as I passed out. As she gave it to me, my eyes fluttered back open, the poison beginning to dilute thanks to whatever Anko gave me. You are too precious at this time to allow you to perish, I heard Orochimaru mutter. The time will come when you will join me, mark my words, Naruto Uzumaki. Anko, drop this fool off where you found him for now. He's conscious, so I can't do anything with him. I felt myself get picked up, the poison still paralyzing me. As Anko carried me away from Orochimaru's hideout, she laid me down upon the ground and looked at me as I began to be able to control my movement. Without any warning, she kissed me upon the lips, my eyes widening as this occurred. I kissed her back as she looked at me looking back at her. I don't know how you done it, but you freed me from Orochimaru's control, she whispered within my ear as I grinned. But I am forever within your debt from now on, Naruto Uzumaki. I wish to be of use to you, in any way that I possibly can. Be my informant, I whispered within her ear as her eyes widened. I am going to be on the run for a while, and I need to watch Konohagakure and this Orochimaru character while I'm away. So I need you to report back to me everything that you discover. But if you betray me and are trying to fool me, I will kill you without any regret. I understand, Anko replied as she looked at me. But why Orochimaru? That would mean I have to return to him. I need you to pretend to be in his control, do whatever he says for the time being, okay? Also, you need to report back to the village and make yourself useful, I replied as Anko nodded with an uncertain look upon her face. I smiled at her as she did this, Anko smiling back as she got off the top of me. You will know when I need to get into contact with you, Anko said as she prepared to walk back. How often? Every month, sooner if important news arises, I responded as Anko nodded. At that, we took our separate ways for the time being. Flashback end. Naruto, good to see ya, Anko said as she spotted me, a smile on her face. I grinned back, smiling as Conan watched with silence. So girls, where are my hugs and kisses? I asked as I got 2 snickers in response. You're still way too young, Naruto, Conan replied as Anko nodded in agreement. Besides, you know our agreement, right? I nodded, remembering that agreement. It was interesting, after leaving Anko all that time ago, I had met Conan later that day as I was wandering around, wondering what I'd do next with my life. As I continued to walk where it felt like nowhere, I was lost and still starving. I hadn't eaten since I had found a few edible berries earlier, but that definitely wasn't enough to fill me. I continued to walk, hoping I would find something, anything, that would lift my spirits at this point. I did, finding a girl next to what looked like a river. She was just standing near the water, throwing what seemed like small paper flowers within the river. They floated for a while before sinking deeper into the water. I watched with interest for some reason, her just making the flowers was astounding. She was so good at it, just making them in a flash and then throwing them within the water. As I watched, she finally turned and spotted me, dirty and tired, looking as if I could pass out right now. She smiled at me, motioning me to come over to her, which I did in a hurry. Why do you look such a mess for a young child? She asked as I shrugged, not really knowing what to say to this. You seem as if you have been through so much in your short lifetime, we are one of a kind. So there are more that are like me, huh? I asked as she nodded in agreement, looking back within the water. This world is impure, it will be the downfall of humanity, the woman stated as I looked at her with surprise. You know probably nothing of what I'm speaking of, but don't be like the other men that are around you. Be strong, fight for something that truly means something in this world. Don't fight for pointless cause, fighting useless battles for the benefit of fools. Be your own man and walk your own path. A child's eyes can be so pure, yet they are the gateway into what the child shall become. I was once a cheerful child, but my eyes only showed me hate, betrayal, and death. Someone I loved was killed due to this, making me into the woman I am today. I don't honestly know why I spouting on about this, but it's just one of those rare occasions where I can just talk, I guess. I understand everything that you just spoke of to me, I replied as the woman looked at me in surprise. I was once that pure child, but my eyes showed me the same thing, besides the death part. And that is what I wanted to truly see the most after years of pain and suffering. But my wish wasn't fulfilled until I took it upon myself to kill those who looked upon me with hate because of the monster within me. I killed them all, making the last thing they seen with their eyes was the birth of a true demon. Something stronger than any fool, stronger than any Hokage. I truly don't know my place in this world, I don't know what I will truly do at this point besides 2 things, kill anyone who I deem pointless and destroy Konohagakure for the betrayal against me. So yeah, I once was pure and dreamed of becoming the Hokage. But after so much hate and foolishness, I walk my own path as a 9-year-old child. The woman didn't say anything at first, her eyes just looking at me as she smiled at me. She handed me one of the flowers, pointing to the river before us. Throw that flower within the water, with the wish that your dreams shall come true, the woman said as I did this, a smile crossing my face. So who are you? I asked as she looked up at the sky and then back at me. I'm Conan, and I'm also a rogue shinobi like you, she replied as she looked down at a ring upon her finger. I would like you to meet some associates of mine, we could use someone like you within our organization. Trust me, everyone there will agree with your ways, I promise this. And one thing I want you to promise me. What is that? I asked curiously as Conan smiled knowingly. When you are able to touch my nose without being on your tippy toes, I want to you, she replied as I coughed a bit, knowing damn well what she meant. Yeah, I promise. I shouted as I wondered why she said you and not me. Something told my young self somehow, someone who shouldn't know jack shit about, that she would dominate me in bed. I grinned at the thought of this as I followed Conan away from the area. As we walked, she looked at me with concern. 13 isn't young Conan, and I'm only a few inches away from being able to touch your nose, I replied crossly as Anko laughed at this. She already knew this little secret, so it wasn't new to her. We have met several times before this, Conan becoming my contact after she basically allied with me instead of the Akatsuki. I was affiliated with the Akatsuki, but I wasn't an official member, so I had to watch these. Especially since they have certain missions that I'm in the dark about, leading to something sinister I sense. But as I met up with the girls, I wasn't thinking any of this shit until Anko told me something that shocked the out of me. Orochimaru wants to have an audience with you, Anko reported as I snickered. You got to be kidding me, I replied as Anko shook her head no. He has been asking about you and sent me to find you actually, Anko responded as I laughed. You can't trust that bastard, Conan chimed in as I nodded. Obviously, he already almost killed me, I replied sarcastically as I paced around the area. What the hell could he possibly want with me? This guy just doesn't give up, does he? So, what are you going to do, Naruto? Anko asked as Conan looked at me, waiting for me to answer her. As I contemplated the idea of meeting with Orochimaru, the thought of this was honestly making my stomach hurt. My head was spinning slightly, my mind still reminiscing about the last time I met with the pesky snake. But the positive of meeting with Orochimaru also sprang within my mind as well. Orochimaru and I did have the same ambition, to dispose of the Konohagakure village once and for all. Even though our reasons might differ, together we would be an unstoppable force. His secret agents might prove useful to me, giving me intel on the other villages. But allying with Orochimaru might make the Akatsuki turn against me, which wasn't in my best interest. The Akatsuki were tough, and even at my current level, I would be disposed of relatively quickly. So I guess my best option was to at least find out what Orochimaru wanted, then try to keep the Akatsuki by my side at the same time. Well, Conan interrupted my thoughts. What are you going to do, Naruto? Anko, report back that I'll meet with Orochimaru, I announced as Anko nodded. Conan looked at me skeptically, probably wondering why I would take such a risk. Before she could open her mouth, I decided to explain. Orochimaru might be a snake, but he is a useful one, I explained as I looked up at the clouds. We have to at least see what is going on before I just ignore him. So Conan, I'll be returning with you to the Akatsuki hideout to explain everything to Pain. We'll have to bring Haku unfortunately. But she might be useful to us, she does have abilities that even I have never seen before. Agreed, Anko replied as Conan nodded silently. We nodded at each other before body flickering away, Conan following me back to meet with Haku. Girl, what are you doing? I asked as I watched Haku pick flowers, wondering why the hell she would be doing something so pointless. Why do you even care? Haku asked crossly as I snickered, preparing to slap the shit out of her. But I remembered that Conan was behind me, so hitting another woman in front of her might not be something that would be beneficial to my health. So I ignored the comment, taking the flowers from her hand and throwing them onto the ground. This is one of my allies, I said as I introduced Conan. I'll let her tell you her name if she feels that she wants to. I'm Haku. Haku introduced herself politely, leaving me wondering what was wrong with this damn girl. She was intense yet kind at the same time, which pissed me off for some reason. Conan only nodded as she looked back at me impatiently. I nodded as I looked at Haku, who got up to her feet. All right, to the hideout then, I said as we all body flickered from the area. As we body flickered away, I sensed someone in the area, seeing the image of a boy wearing round-rimmed glasses step from behind a tree as I flickered away. At the Akatsuki hideout, Uzumaki Naruto, so you are going to visit with Orochimaru? Pain asked as I nodded. I was speaking to one of the visuals of Pain, the real Pain not in the hideout. I think it would be beneficial to us. I began as Pain chuckled softly. I'll make those decisions, Pain interrupted as I looked down at the ground. Orochimaru is not to be trusted, and neither are those that are willing to ally with him. Currently, you are an ally of the Akatsuki. Are you willing to risk this? I am not, that is why I will be spying for the Akatsuki. I exclaimed as I heard another of the members chuckle. It was Sasori, the puppet master. I already have someone spying on Orochimaru currently, Sasori interjected as I snickered. Sending in you would just be pointless. And what do you know? I interrupted as Sasori growled angrily. You're someone that hides behind some hideous puppet and tries to act like he really knows what he's talking about. How about you shut the hell up before I drag you out that shell? Insolent brat, Sasori hissed as the tail of his puppet sprang out instantly, slamming into my chest without any warning. A grin crossed my face as my body disappeared, Sasori's tail actually stabbing a piece of wood. The wood split in two as Sasori growled, looking around for me as I chuckled loudly, the cave echoing my laughter all around the cave. Come out here you little fool. Sasori roared as I jumped onto the top of his puppet, laughing as the tail sprang at me again. I caught it in midair, wrenching it down and slamming it into Sasori's puppet's shell. Sasori chuckled as a cloud of poison was sprayed into my face, the cloud increasing in size, the poison increased in strength. Damn you, I choked out as I jumped off the back of Sasori's puppet, coughing loudly. You were quite foolish, challenging me, Sasori spoke as my mind drifted. Do you feel as if your mind is slowly shutting down? That's because it is actually doing that exact thing. It's somewhat of a new last defense poison, thanks for testing it out for me. Your mind will shut down, making you completely exposed to my fury. You won't be able to use any jutsu, you won't be able to focus. Your mind is failing, and soon you will be frozen, not even able to blink. Fortunately for you, this poison also nullifies your pain receptors, so your death will be painless. This is quite new to me, so I'm impressed with the results. Is that all you can muster? I choked out as I tried to fight the effect of the poison, but my mind was slowly drifting away. Sasori was right, this was very new. This wasn't the first time me and Sasori scuffled, usually he did some type of poison that Master usually was able to dilute within my system, making the poison have no effect. Also, usually his poison was nerve-based, also fatal. This one was more of a, I'll kill you with my own hands, type poison, so I wasn't expecting that. I fell to my knees, Sasori chuckling as he prepared to use the tail of Hirako to stab me in chest. It's over Kyuubi brat, Sasori stated smugly as the tail went flying at my chest, my eyes flinching softly as the tail prepared to collide with my chest. That is enough Sasori, Pain said, the tail stopping as it touched the front of my chest. Drool went down my mouth as I looked at Sasori with a blank expression. Pathetic for someone who is supposed to have the Kyuubi within their body, someone muttered within the cave, bound to be one of the other members watching. Sasori, I see you're picking on children now, Kisame said as he and Itachi walked into the cave. How does it feel to have such a win under your belt? Sasori ignored him, tossing something within some type of bottle in front of my body. I'll spare your life for now, Sasori muttered as he exited the cave. Just for now. Kisame and Itachi looked at me as Conan bent down and placed the bottle within my mouth, draining the liquid within it in my mouth. I coughed softly, the antidote taking effect quickly. Why didn't you use your Sharingan? Itachi asked as I looked at him, smiling broadly. So you noticed, huh? I asked as Conan now realized that she was under a genjutsu this entire time. When my mind broke, she was freed from the genjutsu. I didn't want everyone to know, so I had placed the same genjutsu on Conan and Anko that I had placed on Zabuza. But Itachi, a wielder of the Sharingan, would of course be able to see through such a genjutsu. Where did you get them? Itachi asked, unusually interested in me. I cleared my throat, not expecting Itachi to speak to me so much. Well, I stole them from Kakashi Hatake, I replied as Pain chuckled in the background. My master then copied the one and made them a set. Now I have the Sharingan. So, I was wondering. Itachi didn't say another word, walking away from me and retrieving something from within the cave. Without saying anything, he exited the cave afterwards. I sighed, wondering who would teach me about the Sharingan now. Anyway, Naruto, Pain said as I turned back to him. I shall grant your request, you will be allowed to go see Orochimaru. But if you want to spy for the Akatsuki, that means you will have to cooperate with Orochimaru for as long as it takes. Which means you might have to participate in his plans. Are you willing to accept this? I nodded, thinking over the words within my head. That means I'll be in deep, having to do things that might cramp my style. Fine, report back soon, Pain responded as I looked back at Conan and nodded, exiting the cave. She watched me leave, looking back at Pain. Conan, remember your mission, Pain said as Conan nodded. You are to temporarily pretend to be the ally of the Jinchuruki, and then we shall extract the Kyuubi with ease. I want you to watch him when he is around Orochimaru. We cannot afford to allow him to interfere with our plans. Conan nodded again, looking at the image of Pain with utter seriousness. I was running. From what? I had no idea. But something or someone was chasing me. I continued running, but my feet weren't touching the ground. I was shaken, but not scared. My body was warm, but cold at the same time. This wasn't right, these feelings had to be incorrect. My eyes were heavy, but I wasn't tired. My body ached, but I felt no pain. All of these things riddled me, calling out my name as I continued to run. Who are you? Why were you calling out my name? Master. No, it couldn't be. These things make absolutely no sense. Who are you, and why do you sound so familiar? I woke up instantly, my chest going up and down in an accelerated fashion as my dreams washed away under the light of the morning sun. I sat up, finding out that I had slept underneath some type of oak tree the night before. No one was around me, the sound of birds chirping in the distance the only comfort I had at the moment. I took a deep breath and sighed deeply, taking in the morning air. Did you sleep well? A voice asked as I turned in the direction of the voice with a kunai in my palm. It was only Haku, looking at me with a bright smile as I grunted in response to her question. Did you ever get the coordinates from Anko? I asked as Haku shook her head no. Hey, completely useless as always. How do you even classify yourself as a shinobi girl? Because I have killed grown men with my bare hands, Haku answered simply, making a small shiver go down my spine for a second. Now, shall we stay here or go on the search for your comrade? Best to just station here and wait for Anko to get in contact with us, I replied as I took off my shirt and looked into the small brook nearby. Besides, I'm standing in my own stink, so I think I'm going to take a bath quick. Haku nodded as I tossed the rest of my clothes off and dipped myself into the hot water. It felt exquisite, almost as if I were in a hot spring. I closed my eyes as I leaned back, allowing myself to float. As I did, I felt the presence of another being enter the water, making me look up with anticipation. I lifted up my arm, which had a small kunai concealed within my palm. I turned around quickly as the person jumped back, making me prepare to heave the kunai at their head. As I prepared to, I spotted who the culprit was. It was Haku, who had stripped down as well. My eyes widened slowly as I looked the bodacious girl up and down, not expecting her to have such a firm and emasculate body. She was quite perky, her having to be at least about a solid C, maybe even D. Her curves were perfect, complementing her own figure with style and grace. As she undid the needle she used to keep her hair in place, my eyes rolled down to another section of her body. Haku teasingly covered herself, her face going bright red as I traveled down toward that area. As I studied her, I could see that she definitely wanted me. Even though her mouth didn't move, her eyes looked at me like an expensive piece of meat. She was hungry, and I was prepared to feed her until she was full. I wrapped my arms around her sides, roughly pulling her against me as she squealed slightly with pleasure. I grinned in anticipation as my hands went down to her, rubbing her nipples gently but surely. She began to squeal a bit louder, almost giving me more energy as I pulled her even closer and inserted it in. As I did, she moaned loudly, making the grin on my face increase even more. I quickly thrusted it in and out, no holding back. Haku grabbed onto my shoulders for dear life, as if she would fall into the water without my shoulders. I closed my eyes and rocked back and forth roughly as Haku began to bite her lower lip. I lowered my mouth and slowly began to lick her nipples, making her squeal even louder now. I continued to go back and forth, making her scream with pleasure as my eyes glowed red with delight. "Oh Master Zabuza!" Haku screamed as I stopped dead in my tracks, looking at her in awe. Haku opened one of her eyes, looking at me with a sheepish smile. I pulled away from her as I went lumbering back to shore, soaked and really pissed off. As I got dressed, Haku came ashore as well, wrapping up her body with a long wrap. "So that is how you conceal your body, huh?" I asked as I looked over nonchalantly. "Hey, and here I thought you and Zabuza were like master and student." "I guess not, huh? It isn't like that," Haku answered sharply as I snickered, looking over her way. "Master Zabuza allowed me to simply fulfill his needs that every man needs once in a while." "Sure, whatever you need to tell yourself to sleep at night, girl," I muttered as I picked up Zabuza's sword and sheathed it upon my back. "Damn, why the hell is this sword so damn big for? It isn't made for some delusional child." Haku spat as I looked over at her in surprise. "What, do you have a problem about what I said? It is true, is it not? I think Master Zabuza was foolish for allowing himself to perish at the hands of you." "Okay, watch it, girly," I growled as I stopped dead in my tracks. "You better watch your tone before we have a real problem on our hands." "Fine, let's see what you can do, child." Haku roared as she sent 3 ice shards at my forehead, me deflecting them with my kunai I kept concealed within my palm. "You just dug your own grave, girl," I muttered as I went into the offensive, body flickering before Haku, backhanding her across the face. The impact of the slap sent her across the brook, making the young girl's body glide across the water. Using her chakra, she stopped herself by using her left hand to steady herself on top of the water. I went running across the water as Haku looked up, making several hand signs with her left palm. I activated my Sharingan to copy the jutsu, but it was somehow unable to. What the hell? I wondered as Haku began to tap her left foot against the water at high speed. "Hai jutsu, Sensatsu Susho," Haku shouted as I watched on with confusion. As I stood by, I felt the water freezing slightly underneath my feet, telling me something wasn't right in the woods. Suddenly, thousands of ice shards came flying out the water, covering my entire body with ice needles. I gasped as my clone was destroyed, Haku gasping as my hand came out of the water, pulling her deeply within. Haku looked down, using her other foot to kick me as I dragged her deep under the water. "How about I show you something I learned from your master?" I mouthed to Haku as I made several hand signs. "Suiten Suiryuden no Jutsu." A large water dragon surfaced under the water, Haku looking on with widened eyes as she tried to quickly make hand signs. "Not so fast." I shouted as a clone of me grabbed Haku's hands from behind, wrenching both her hands behind her back as the water dragon hit her dead on. "This is what you get for defying me," I muttered as I swam up, going onto shore. I groaned as I looked down at my clothes, which were drenched in water. I stretched out my arms as the sun bathed me in its light. As I did, 3 kunai came at me from nowhere, me jumping up as the 3 kunai landed before me. What the hell? I wondered aloud as Haku sprang from the water, making several hand signs as I got into a defensive position. "Haijutsu, Maku Hayu Sho," Haku whispered as several ice mirrors came around me, trapping me within a ice-like prison. "So, this is due to your Kekai Genkei huh?" I muttered as I looked around the prison. "Not too bad in here, kind of cold though," Haku chuckled as she went into the mirror, all of the mirrors showing Haku. "Unfortunately for you, you overestimated yourself and fell head-on for my secret jutsu," Haku stated as she held ice needles at her side. "Now, allow me to show you why me and Master Zabuza made the ultimate team." I only looked on as Haku sprayed me from several directions with ice needles, the needles going into every part of my body. I coughed up tremendous blood as one of the needles went directly into my neck. "Well, it seems you have pushed me to the limit now," I growled as I took the needle from my neck. "You pathetic little bitch, let me show you some real power." I let out a tremendous roar as my body was covered in red chakra, Haku's eyes widening as my Sharingan spotted the real one. "Too simple," I shouted as I increased the chakra, the entire ice chamber shaking as if it was in fear. Haku tried to attack me again, but I simply dodged the attack, teleporting out of ice chamber as I did. I then gathered the Rasengan within my left palm and used the teleportation jutsu again, pinpointing onto the real Haku. Haku looked back as I prepared to launch the Rasengan into her chest, knowing this would indeed kill her. "You're finished," I roared as I prepared to teleport, someone grabbing my wrist with the Rasengan in my palm. As they did, that body disappeared instantly, me putting a kunai knife up to the person's throat. "Wait, Itachi," I asked as it was indeed the oldest remaining Uchiha, Itachi. Itachi only snickered as the Itachi before me melted away, turning into a flock of birds before my eyes. I squinted in surprise as I turned around, several Itachis behind me, all wielding kunai. I rolled away from his first attack, the others following me closely as I got into a defensive position. One of the clones leaned forward and attacked, me dodging the attack and giving it a square uppercut to the jaw when I was in radius. The clone didn't disappear, instead it melted around my hand, going all over my body. I looked up in horror as the other Itachis piled onto me, making me sink further into a pile of stinky black goop. As it felt as if my lungs were closing, I looked around, everything completely normal. Itachi was before me, with Haku by his side. "That was pathetic," Itachi muttered as he studied me with his Sharingan eyes. "You have the Sharingan, which should nullify any genjutsu that comes your way. But you are not properly trained in the Sharingan due to the fact you are not an Uchiha. Which is why I need to learn how to use the Sharingan," I exclaimed as I looked over at Haku. "By the way, how is she still alive?" "He stopped the battle when you gathered that jutsu," Haku answered, almost looking disgusted. "He told me I would have perished if you succeeded in using it." I snickered as I turned away from the stupid girl and looked over at Itachi. "I was ordered to give you this," Itachi stated as he handed me what looked like an Akatsuki cloak. "Wait, I'm part of the Akatsuki now?" I asked as Itachi nodded in response. "Then Itachi Uchiha, take me on as your apprentice for the Sharingan." Itachi only looked at me as he prepared to walk away, me walking behind him and placing my hand on his shoulder. "I'm willing to fight you for that apprenticeship," I stated as I stared down the legendary Uchiha from behind. "Is that so?" Itachi asked as what looked like a smile crept onto his face. "Well then, show me what you can do. This time, don't hold anything back." As Itachi said this, the symbol in his eyes changed. "Is this the second stage of the Sharingan?" I wondered as I looked away quickly. "Alright, let's do this. Uchiha Itachi, take me on as your apprentice. I exclaimed as Itachi snickered, turning away as I looked at the Sharingan legend's back with my Sharingan activated. I growled angrily as Itachi paid my request no mind, going on his way back to the Akatsuki hideout. I wasn't asking you to take me as your apprentice, I muttered as I placed my hand on Itachi's shoulder. That was actually a demand. Itachi looked back at me, his Sharingan eyes changing in an instant. They were different than the normal Sharingan, his pupils looking as if they were small shuriken. You know, they say the Sharingan is a cursed ability, Itachi mumbled as his eyes studied me. After the fall of Uchiha Madara, it seemed people began to lose their faith in the technique. Especially after I slaughtered the entire clan. Thanks for the history lesson, I replied dryly as I looked back at Itachi with a determined grin. But what does this have to do with you training me? Allow me to show you, Itachi murmured as my entire being faded to black in an instant, my mind breaking away as the Tsukuyomi took effect. I found myself standing within the village once again, staring down all the villagers who shunned me in the past. I was a young child once again, sitting in the fetal position as the villagers screamed at me, tossing rocks at my body. I closed my eyes tightly as I held my head, wishing the images would go away. Simple-minded fool, you could never master the Sharingan, Itachi murmured in the crowd as he appeared before me, a hood covering his face. No, I have Master to protect me. I shouted as tears streamed down my face, the entire village calling me names as I sat there. Master, please help me. Please, don't let them bother me anymore. Pathetic fox, be gone, Itachi muttered as all of the villagers turned into him, all of the hooded Itachis wielding long katanas. As they all held the swords at my throat, I knew I had no chance in hell to win the battle. Absolutely pathetic Naruto. Master, I asked timidly as Itachi looked around in confusion. What happened to you, Naruto? Master asked as I shrugged, looking up at the sky. Did you forget what you did to those villagers? Those villagers will never hurt you again. And why is that, Naruto? Because I'm stronger than I used to be, I answered, Master chuckling softly. Because you are a true demon, Naruto, Master corrected as I grinned, red chakra circling around my body as I pulled myself away from the Tsukuyomi's spell. Now awaken, show this fool you aren't any ordinary shinobi. You are the red demon of Konoha. Exactly who I am, I exclaimed as my Sharingan eyes changed, the two small insignias in my eyes becoming three. Instead of a small dot where my pupil was, it was replaced with a long slit with the insignias floating around it. Impossible, he's managed to upgrade his Sharingan. Itachi shouted as I pulled myself out of the genjutsu, looking at Itachi with a wild grin. I went flying at him with incredible speed, slamming my fist into his jaw. The impact sent him flying back, sliding across the small brook. As he slid past the brook onto the ground once again, I teleported before him with my Rasengan in my left palm. I slammed it into his chest, causing a gigantic crater from the chakra sphere. Itachi looked up with blood leaking from his mouth, a small smile forming on his face as he disappeared in a cloud of white smoke. You've certainly improved since I last saw you battle, Itachi commented as a long kunai poked me in the back. Maybe you aren't a complete waste of time like I previously believed. Does that mean you will train me? I asked hopefully as Itachi looked down at me, nodding slightly. Yes, I roared happily as I jumped up and down with excitement. I can't wait to learn the Tsukuyomi and the other techniques. Unfortunately, that will have to wait until you are finished working with Orochimaru, a voice interrupted as Anko stepped from behind a small oak tree, grinning broadly. Nice win, Naruto, didn't think you would push it that far. Yeah, now what about Snake Pedophile? I asked as Anko giggled girlishly. Well, he's ready to explain his plans to you if you're willing to cooperate, Anko answered as I nodded. Then come on, he's stationed not too far from here. We will meet again, Uzumaki Naruto, Itachi murmured as he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, me and Haku following Anko to Orochimaru's current hideout. Invade the Hidden Leaf Village? I asked almost too excitedly as Orochimaru nodded, a twisted smile crossing his face. Ah, I thought you would enjoy this one, Orochimaru hissed as I nodded eagerly. I will be posing as the Sand Village cage, as you and Anko will be stationed inside the leaf itself. Naruto, you will be joining the Sand Village as the newest genin to join a team of my choosing. You will be working with another of my agents, Kabuto, who will appear before you when you least expect it, so remember his name. Also, meet my other ninja that will be invading the village alongside me. Orochimaru snapped his fingers, 4 other ninja body flickering into the room. This is Kidomaru, Tayuya, Sakin, and Jirobo, Orochimaru introduced the ninja. They are considered as the Sound Four. They will be assisting me in a more personal matter I must deal with in the village. You're going to attack the old man, aren't you? I asked knowingly as Orochimaru flashed me his creepy smile. Young Naruto, such full of life, Orochimaru replied as he turned away, avoiding my question. I expect a good fight from you, Naruto, plus the Hidden Leaf's pride and joy, Uchiha Sasuke. Ha, that loser, I muttered as I chuckled at the mentioning of his name. What do you expect that fool to do against me? Naruto, you must contain yourself within the Hidden Leaf, Anko warned as I sighed loudly. No showboating, no foolish behavior, and absolutely no killing without meaning or the permission of Lord Orochimaru. Damn, I don't think I was born with a hearing problem, I muttered angrily as I turned to Orochimaru. Now, you still haven't told me why you want to attack the village anyway. What the hell did they do to you? At least I have a reason too. I want to dismantle it board by board, Orochimaru interrupted as I looked back at him with widened eyes. I want that entire piece of garbage to be wiped away, cleaned, and taken to the curb. Wow, someone needs to see a psychiatrist, I whispered to the one called Tayuya, Tayuya looking back at me with anger. Never disrespect Lord Orochimaru before me. Tayuya roared as she sent me flying with some sort of noise. I looked up from the ground as I witnessed her put a flute in her mouth. Say your prayers, you little worm, Tayuya shouted as she prepared to play. Quote, tonight we blend ourselves in, Orochimaru explained. Prepare yourselves for the battle of a